Season 2 of Short Treks begins with Q&A about the arrival of Spock on board the USS Enterprise for the very first time, where he is greeted by none other than the famous Number One. He speaks in the crisp tone of someone straight out of boot camp, but she's more perturbed by his lack of questions upon arrival, seeing as how he's the science officer and therefore should immediately say something along the lines of, "Hello, I'm Spock. Do you think that the existence of atomic structure underpinning the nature of matter is an indication that Democritus is correct, or does the fact that the existence of subatomic particles, which themselves are divisible, indicates that he was wrong because matter can be considered to be infinitely divisible?" Instead, he just says hi. So, with her not just prompting, but demanding that he become a nuisance with questions, the two take a trip to the bridge, or try to anyway. Alas, the turbolift breaks on the way. Though no surprise, given that this looks more like an amusement park ride than a means of getting from floor to floor. Get off on Deck 9 for a chance to ride the octopus. Luckily, the turbolifts still have those phones that you can use to call for help, so Number One calls up engineering to complain about being stuck on a lift because it's been over-engineered to the point of ridiculousness. They're going to work on it, so that just leaves Number One and Spock in a confined elevator, the stuff that erotic fanfic is made for. The questions go on about Number One's assessment of Captain Pike, which leads to an awkward observation when Spock notes how much attention she has clearly paid to the captain. In a similar vein, she has an uncomfortable moment when Spock finishes her sentence for her on a technical topic. She is clearly familiar with the tropes, and while this may be atypical of fanfic locales, I wouldn't be surprised if Aerosmith singing Love in an Elevator weren't running through her mind at this moment.
Have you ever considered that the Prime Directive is not only not ethical, but also illogical, and perhaps morally indefensible?
That one goes over like a fart during a moment of silence. After a while, Number One has had enough and decides we've reached the let's escape on our own phase of the trapped in an elevator plot. It's almost never a good idea. So with Spock having asked pretty much everything that was excluded from the Mensa test for being excessive, Number One asks about him smiling when he beamed aboard, because as she notes, a smiling Vulcan can be disconcerting. And while that should be other people's problems, if you are ever planning to get the big chair, you do need to be aware of the effect that you have on others, or their discomfort could become a subconscious obstacle. Before you start judging, the subtext of this scene implies that her remarks are personal experience based upon a similar need to suppress who she truly is, because she breaks into song, though admittedly Number One is the human in Starfleet most deserving of singing the Major General's song. After swearing him to secrecy about what just happened, first she and then Spock are rescued from their Wonkavator and get to see the bridge. Plus you get to listen to the always pleasant Captain Pike while looking at a pretty nebula, so worth the trip. When talking about Season 1 short treks, I found that there were some stories, like The Brightest Star, which would have worked better as part of a larger episode, while others, such as Escape Artist, could not be done in that format without losing something. Q&A straddles the line there. It is something that could be included because it has been included numerous times in the show's history, whether it's a turbolift or some other case of being stuck together and confined and therefore getting to know each other better. At the same time, these stories are part of a larger episode and thus are relegated to the B, C, or D plot, or else they get padded out and become less effective. The tight runtime of Q&A allows its simple plot to remain the focus and to find its own beats rather than cutting away to deal with other matters. And what helps substantially is the skill Rebecca Romaine brings to the role of Number One, whose character has been redefined for the modern era as a human computer, but not Vulcan-like, just incredibly capable in all her aspects. I realize I belabor this with my Discovery reviews already, but she demonstrates how Michael's overexposure is to the series and character's detriment, as Number One shows similar aspects, but is a character much easier to connect with. The little of her we get goes a long way. Spock, on the other hand, is going to be a very divisive issue. This reinterpretation of Spock as one who would normally openly show his emotions doesn't gel well with the one that we've had for over half a century. an issue that is no doubt made worse for people who either hate Discovery or the new Spock himself. The scene certainly worked well. His part of their double act was ably done. It's this aspect alone that I found a bit hard to take on board. Q&A is an entertaining little outing, but more for the novelty of the experience than for the insight into the character of Spock.